Summer of the Mariposas by Guadalupe Garcia McCall, read by Melinda Garcia. Chapter 13. Las jarras. Qué precias plumas tienen, que tienen que tener jarras para poder volar. The arrows. What precise feathers the arrows must have in order to fly. To say that we found our way quickly would be to lie. It took us hours to get back on the right path, or at least the path we hoped was the right one. Who was that, do you think? Another witch? A sorceress? Delia asked as we plodded along the moonlit path. That was the great mother Tonachin, I said. I've been using her amulet, this ear pendant, to call on her for help along the way. La Llorona gave it to me. She was right when she said we'd need it. I peered at the map in my hand by the flickering light of our waning flashlight. It was hard enough not being able to read the map without having to worry about missing the landmarks altogether. But with the moon hiding behind a cloudy sky, they were both impossible. You mean she's the one who gave you these earrings? Velia asked, reaching up to touch the ear pendant hanging against my right cheek. We have special protection? Juanita said as she ran up to join our conversation. Isn't that cool? Yes, it is, but there's more. La Llorona said we have to remain noble and kind. If we do that, everything will be all right, I said, relieved that she finally believed me. Then, remembering La Llorona and all that she had done for us so far, I began to wonder why she had not been the one to come to our aid. Had the Nagual been too powerful for her? If that was so, had she asked the goddess to help us herself? Was La Llorona ultimately behind our salvation? I wonder if Mama knows what the song is really for, Velia said. Mama had sung that to us so many times I couldn't count. Now that the fog of the Nagual spell had lifted, I couldn't believe I hadn't made the connection sooner. She probably doesn't. I mean, who would have thought that some supernatural being was going to show up and save us because we sang her a song? Delia asked, stating the obvious. I always thought Mama's lullabies were magical, Pita whispered. When we were young and Mama used to sing to us, I felt special inside. I know what you mean, Juanita said, wrapping her arms around Pita. Her voice was so sweet, so loving. I always felt like we were more than her children. I felt like we were her life. It's almost as if she knew someday her lullabies would keep us safe from harm, so she made sure she sang to us every night. It's a wonder we forgot that song. Oh boy, it's getting deep out here, Velia said. What makes you think Mama knows anything about Donachin coming to save us? Because, I'll be honest, I didn't know what the heck was going on when the goddess showed up. Whatever, Juanita retorted, letting Velia's negative comments slide right off her back like cold butter off a warm tortilla. All I'm saying is Mama knows the song for a reason. Someone taught it to her. It's a lullaby, right? So it's been passed down from generation to generation. Mothers must have been singing it to their children since the time when Mama's ancestors, the Aztecas, were overpowered by the Spaniards. I folded the map and shoved it back in my backpack. Well, the bottom line is La Llorona gave me the earrings to invoke her, and Teresita kind of let us know that Nachin would come to our rescue, and she did. But now it's time we move on. I pulled my backpack over my shoulders and started hiking through the thick brush of the overgrown path. That's not true, Velia complained as she began to follow me and Juanita through the woods. Teresita never said anyone would come help us. She said we had to sing the song of the birds. I know, I was listening. I have a photogenic memory. Photographic genius. Juanita spit out angrily at Velia, who had caught up and was now walking between us. It's called photographic memory. And anyway, I don't see how that would help you remember what was being said, since photographic memories deal with sight, not hearing. Okay, stop it, both of you. I don't want to have to separate you again, I yelled, moving between them as we made our way through the shrubbery and into a clearing. Well, Teresita didn't tell us we were in danger of being boiled alive in a cauldron. So, Forgive me if I don't put too much stock into what an old bag of bones had to say, Belia complained, hiking her backpack higher up over her shoulders before she stalked ahead of us. I have a feeling there's a lot that Teresita didn't tell us, Delia said, stopping to take a swig of water from a gourd. She did warn us about the Nagual. She just wasn't very specific, Juanita said, turning back to face the road again. Yes, but there was more, I said. They knew what I was talking about. You mean the coven of lechuzas? Juanita whispered, looking at me sideways. We've got to find a place to hide for the night before they find us, Belia said, looking to either side of the dirt path. Well, what do you know? Ask and you shall receive. Delia punched my arm and pointed to the right of the path. I peered into the darkness, but all I could see was the faint outline of faraway mountains against the dusty horizon. What is it? I asked, giving up on my poor eyesight. A barn! Beta screamed. She ran up in front of us and jumped up and down in place with excitement. Now hold on, I said, putting my hand on Beta's shoulder. Settle down. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. What? Belia wanted to know as she joined our united circle. What's wrong? Nothing, I said. Nothing's wrong. We just need to make sure it's okay to go in there. We need to be cautious, that's all. Teresita's husband said we could rest here. Why do we have to be so careful? Belia asked, joining us as we faced the barn. We just have to, that's all. Well, who's coming with me? I asked, looking around for volunteers. Not surprisingly, nobody said anything. You guys are like gallinas cluecas, puro guato, a bunch of clucking chickens, all talk and no action. I started to cross the grass, heading for the barn on my own. Although I was scared, I wasn't going to show it. I was the eldest. It was my job to bring them to safety. Of course, leaving them alone on the side of a dirt road in rural Mexico wasn't my idea of protecting them, but I didn't have much choice either. Wait, Juanita ran after me. Do you really think it's safe in the barn? I mean, what if the lechuzas are in there? Don't be ridiculous, I said. Lechuzas don't hide in barns at night. Owls are nocturnal predators. You should know that. You've seen every animal documentary on the Nature Channel. Oh, yeah. Ever heard of a barn owl? Juanita taunted. What do you think a lechuza is? An owl, genius. Try keeping up. Whatever, Miss Gifted and everything. I'm going to check it out. Are you coming with, or are you going back to cower with the rest of the Brody hens? I guess I'm coming with, Juanita said, but she didn't sound too sure of it. Good, I said, starting off again. Let's get on with it. I'm tired, and judging from this humidity, it's going to rain soon. Side by side, we hiked through the overgrown meadow off the beaten path. We had to be very careful because the field was full of burrs and stingweeds. So we traveled slowly, stomping the tall grass down as we went. When we finally got to the barn, we found an old oil lamp hanging just inside the door. I jiggled to the compartment in the underside of the tin relic and found two long, thin matches. While Juanita held a flashlight over me, I lifted the filthy cobweb glass and lit a match. To my surprise, the wick lit right up, and after shaking it a bit, I could hear that there was enough kerosene in it to keep going for a while, maybe even all night. That would help keep Beta from getting scared. We should conserve what's left of the battery. I turned off the flashlight and stuffed it back in Juanita's backpack. Looking around the barn, we saw that it was most definitely abandoned. There were some old, rusted tools lying about, and some desiccated straw lined the far left corner. But half the roof was either missing or about to fall off. Nevertheless, we decided it was in good enough shape to offer us some semblance of security for the night, however pitiful it might be. The girls were delighted to hear the news. Once in sight, Pita walked around the poorly lit barn for a while, playing with an old rusty rake and a pitchfork she'd found in a stall. The rest of us emptied the contents of our backpacks and lay on several rumpled layers of clothing. Unlike Pita, who was still playing with the rake, Juanita, the twins, and I had no desire to expend any more energy than we already had. It had been a hot, tiring 2 days of walking since we'd left El Sacrificio, and our journey was far from over. If Teresita's husband's hand drawn map was even sort of accurate, we hadn't covered half the ground we'd intended to today. We were just content to rest our feet and curl up in a semi cozy place. I got Pita to finally settle down beside me. But even after everyone else fell asleep, I lay wide awake, looking up at the stars through the wide hole in the ceiling. We had traveled so long and so far from that first night, when I had seen that series of stars fall from the sky like a meteor shower, that I wondered if we'd ever get back to that life again, back to those long, playful days without danger or witches or warlocks. At the thought of Mama crying every day, fearing for our lives, tears started to prick at my eyes, and I wiped them away. It was then that I saw several tiny figures flying in and out of my field of vision over the barn. Bats? I asked myself quietly, sitting up to get a better look. No, Juanita whispered, as she too sat up. They look too big to be bats. I know, I said, keeping my eyes on the creatures above. I shook the other girls awake. What? Velia mumbled, half asleep. Leave me alone. They're here, I whispered, because by then I had figured it out. Velia sat up so fast she stirred Delia beside her. Who? Mama? Delia sprang up into a sitting position beside her twin, and her eyes went to the doors on the other side of the barn. No, I whispered, pointing at the creatures. They had stopped flying and were now perched side by side around the hole in the ceiling, peering down at us from the darkened heavens. Lechuzas? Velia asked, searching the sky above. There's 6 of them, I said, nodding. I counted them twice. Then it's not them, Juanita said, putting a hand to her chest, still scared but sounding pretty relieved. You need 13 to make a true coven. They must be regular owls if there's fewer than that. Maybe the other 7 are dead, Belia whispered. Or maybe, Delia interjected, they split up and the others are on their way. I remained frozen, unsure of whether a reaction would startle the lechuzas into an attack. Regular owls aren't that big, and they don't travel in broods, I said. No, it's them. I reached for my backpack slowly, trying not to show fear. Parliament, Juanita whispered from beside me on the nest of clothes. What? I asked, confused. A group of owls is a parliament, not a brood, she explained. That's chickens, hens, actually. Oh, like that matters right now. I started to move my hand slowly toward the tiny front pocket of my shorts, pulling the piece of silk string out of it without drawing too much attention to myself. Sorry, Juanita said. Do you have the string? Yes, I whispered. I put it in a safe place as soon as Teresita handed it to me. But I need you to wake Bita up without scaring her. Once everyone's awake, you'll have to form a protective circle around me so they can't get to me while I tie the knots. Okay, Delia and Velia whispered in unison. I could hear the lechuzas whispering menacingly above me, up on the roof, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. I unzipped the tiny front pocket of my shorts as slowly as possible, trying not to draw attention to myself. But the minute I pulled out the piece of marked silk thread, the lechuzas launched themselves off the roof and flew into the barn, wailing and screeching. Startled awake by the lechuzas' blood-curdling screams, Pita sat up and screamed almost as loudly as the winged witches. From that moment on, everything happened very fast. The lechuzas descended upon us with all their fury. As they came at us, I saw that they were as big as vultures, and their wingspan was twice their length. Their long, scraggly hair streamed behind them like raggedy, moth-eaten capes as they flew at us. But the most horrific parts of them were their faces. They looked like dried-up pieces of fruit. Desiccated human faces, witches with metallic beaks for lips. The coven of lechuzas squawked and screeched as they flew in and grabbed at us with steel talons, pulling out chunks of our hair, shredding our clothes, and scratching our arms, hands, and faces as they flew by. One at a time, they soared up into the rafters and swooped down to do it all over again. If they had been less aggressive, less calculating, we might have been able to defend ourselves. But they were so fierce and erratic in their attacks, we never stood a chance. Niñas malas, said one in Mama's voice. Malcriadas, said another in La Llorona's voice. Egoístas, said the one with Cecilia's voice. Arrepiéntanse, said another in Teresita's voice. According to them, we were evil children, spoiled, rotten, and selfish. We should repent. They kept chanting over and over again as they scratched at us with their sharpened talons. Repent, repent, repent. Stop! Juanita screamed as she swatted them away with her hands. Stop! Stop! We cried as we whacked at them. But no matter what we did or how much we begged, they wouldn't stop. If anything, their viciousness grew even more intense as they started to abuse us. The rain we had been expecting started to pour down on us through the holes in the roof. There was no escape from the feathers and the rain. The wind picked up, and I could hear thunder in the distance. I remembered the piece of silk thread and realized I was still clutching it. But no sooner had I looked at it than one of the lechuzas caught it out of my hand. I tried to hold on to it, but the evil bird was too strong. She flapped her wings in my face, slapping my head with her sharp, bristly feathers. I was tugging against her, holding on to the string for dear life, when one of her feathers pricked me right in the eye. An intense pain shot through my eye like a bullet, and I let go of the string. Taking the string with her, the lechuza flew out of the barn through the hole in the roof into the darkness and rain. And just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Velia and Delia rolled away from the rest of us. Screaming, they made a mad dash for the door at the other side of the barn. With two lechuzas at their backs, they busted out of the barn as if their heels were on fire, never once looking back. Had they abandoned their hermanitas? I looked at the barn doors noisily slapping back and forth with the force of the storm, and I couldn't help but feel powerless. The twins' desertion shattered any hope I had left of defeating the malevolent witches. And for the first time on our journey, I wanted to cry. But there was no time for that. With the twins gone, the remaining lechuzas concentrated on the rest of us. Two of them dived so fast and hard into me that they knocked me over. One of them sat on my chest. Another one had Juanita pinned face up against the pile of clothes we had used to make ourselves a nest. Pita was pressed against the wall, shivering, while a lechuza pecked gently at her head as if we were picking nits out of her hair. You like eating sweets, don't you? The lechuza, with Cecilia's voice, pulled Pita in close until their faces were almost touching. That's because you're a piglet. A little piggy with a piggy nose and a piggy mouth and a piggy stomach. You're a chubby baby. But give me time. I'll put some real meat on your bones, thicken you up, and get you ready to be eaten. My sisters and I haven't eaten much lately. Your big brown eyes look delicious. I bet they'd taste sweet, slathered with jalapeno marmalade. How do you like your adventure now, you arrogant little twit? A lechuza with Inez's voice asked Juanita as she caressed her face with the bristly feathers of her left wing. What? Do you think you're smarter than them? Well, you're not. You dragged them all into this mess with your self-righteousness. Juanita sniffed and hiccuped as she tried in vain to stop herself from bawling. Oh, what's the matter now? Why are you crying? Are you sad? Maybe you should have listened to your older sister. Maybe you should have stayed home and cleaned and cooked like your mother instead of thinking you've got brains. You think you can fool me? The one with Mama's voice asked me. She was sitting on top of me, kneading into my chest with her claws like a cat, laughing when I winced in pain. Answer me, she screamed. But instead of talking, I looked straight into her red, fiery eyes with what I hoped was disdain. What's the matter? Aren't you afraid? Want to run away? She asked. And when I didn't answer, she dug her sharp talons deeper into my chest. The pain was horrendous, and I wanted to scream out, but I held my breath instead. Of course you do. I know how much of a coward you really are. I know how irresponsible you can be. Who's the one who relinquished the piece of thread? Who's going to protect your sisters now? Who? 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 She was shaking me then, grabbing me by my shirt collar and rattling me like she wanted to loosen the last breath out of my chest. I closed my eyes and started to pray, silently at first, and then with more courage and conviction, but my prayers were useless against her. Instead of getting off my chest, she started to laugh, a deep cackling laugh that vibrated inside my head and made me lose my place in prayer. You, that's who, whispered the lechuza, her rotten breath caressing my neck like a dirty rag, penetrating into my every pore. You, you. She kept screaming in a parody of Mama's voice, spitting putrid saliva in my face. You dressed like me. You took them away. You left me crying. You lost the thread. Her words, spoken in Mama's voice, pierced through my heart, and I screamed in agony, No, no, it's not true, it's not. Just when I thought all was lost, Velia and Delia burst through the barn doors wielding what could only be described as giant metal baseball bats. I don't know what kind of tools they were or where they came from. All I know is they looked absolutely dangerous. Die! The twins screamed as they charged in our direction. The lechuza screeched angrily, let go of us, and scattered themselves around the room. One by one, they flapped their wings and took flight, soaring above us, cursing our names and threatening to take their revenge. You take the pitchfork. I call the rake, I told Juanita. I scrambled to my feet and rushed to the other side of the barn where Pita had abandoned the rusty old tools. You can't hurt us. We're the Avengers, the devil's playmates, the one with La Llorona's voice screeched. You've caused too much heartache and pain. You disrespected Cecilia, humiliated her, and now you have to pay, the one with Teresita's voice yelled from the rafters. You'll never get away, the one with Mama's voice screamed as she descended upon me. With all my strength, I batted at her with the brittle rake. She flew around me to avoid getting hurt, but she wasn't completely successful. I'd clip her right wing and she screamed in rage. Or maybe it was pain. I shook the feathers out of the rake and prepared myself for the next attack. Just draw her close, Velia whispered. She and Delia inched themselves toward Juanita and me. We can take these witches, Delia announced. Watch your mouth, I warned out of habit. Although this time I had to agree with her colorful language. These creatures were more than wicked, they were downright malevolent. Repent, 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 the lechuza screeched as they swooped down on us like a squadron of fighter planes. We stood side by side, all four of us, defensively, holding up our weapons like ninja warriors, while Pita huddled behind us, defenseless, without a weapon to wield. Claws, feathers, and hair flew everywhere during the first onslaught. But through it all, we never quit. We batted and struck and clubbed and raked. And as we did, one by one the lechuzas flew off our weapons, hit the barn walls, and fell to the ground, squealing like stuck pigs. When Juanita pierced through one of them with her pitchfork, it screamed out, convulsed, and then lay lifeless. So that's how we got rid of most of them. The twins and I clubbed and raked them until they were stunned and dazed, and Juanita finished them off by staking them. By the time we were done, the place was a bloody, feathery, eerie mess. We stood side by side, looking past the settling debris, not daring to talk in case we were dreaming wide awake. I knew I should be shocked, horrified even, that we had just slaughtered a group of beings. Not human, perhaps, but living, breathing beings in their own right. But my blood was pumping furiously through my body, washing away any remorse I might have felt. Maybe it was the danger they had posed, or maybe it was just becoming psychotic, but I didn't feel guilty at all. I felt strong and powerful and vindicated as I kicked a blood splattered feathery lump out of my way and headed for our nest in the corner of the barn. You did it, Beta squealed and jumped for joy beside me. You saved us. She shook fuzzy remnants of feathers out of her hair and spat them off her face. Wow, Juanita whispered, still caught in a dreamlike state. We killed them all. Can you believe it? We won. We defeated them. No, we haven't, I said, looking up to the hole in the ceiling above our nest. The rest of them are back. Up in the sky, behind the rest of the perched, cackling lechuzas, there was a tinge of pink on the purple face of night. Dawn was coming soon. The sun's about to rise, I said. If we ever want to be able to sleep again without fearing for our lives, we have to finish them. I'd lost the silk thread, though. How could we do what Teresita told us would defeat the lechuzas? I was bemoaning our plight internally again when I saw Pita disheveled in her best Sunday dress and realized we'd had the solution all along. Come here, Pita. When she came closer, I grabbed the tiny bow at her collar and yanked it off her dress with one hard tug. What are you doing? She wailed. Give that back. I'd rip it off cleanly without damaging the dress, but that bow was the thing that Pita loved the most about that dress. She was understandably upset and reached for the bow. I held it out of her reach until I could untie the bow and smooth it out between my fingertips. I need it, Pita. It's silk, I explained, ripping it so I can pull out a single piece of thread. Pita touched her collar and mourned. This is my favorite dress. Shh, we'll get you a new one once we're back home. Watch my back, I whispered, stepping back to stand between Pita and Delia. Delia and Juanita closed the gap in front of me and stood wielding their farm tools before them, ready for the next attack. Padre nuestro, que estás en los cielos. I started to say the Lord's Prayer in Spanish. Only this time I was smarter about it. This time I held the thread tightly against my chest. Since there was no way of marking it, I would simply make every knot sit tightly against the last. Teresita hadn't said the knots had to be set apart by any particular amount of space. She only said they had to be evenly spaced. So putting them side by side was, in my opinion, perfectly spaced. With every word I spoke, it seemed the rain began to wane. Less and less of it fell in through the roof. As the first prayer ended, and I closed the first knot, the rain stopped completely, and the rest of the lechuzas screeched in pain and flew into the barn. They soared over us, ranting and raving, and angrily flapping their wings. They circled and circled, creating a whirlwind, a dirt devil of debris and dark, moldy hay that swirled all the way up to the ceiling. The miniature storm swirled and stood before us like a charmed snake, flicking our hair into our faces, wrapping it around our necks, choking us, stealing our breaths. But all the time, I stayed focused and prayed. Knot after knot I tied. Prayer after prayer I prayed. 7 Lord's Prayers and 7 Holy Marys, and it seemed that each one of those knots took away just a little bit more of that whirlwind's strength. Shorter and shorter it got, and slower the lechuzas flew, until finally, as I tied the last of the 7 knots, a whisper of daylight broke through the roof and the whirlwind died away. The 7 remaining lechuzas fell to the floor, dead. Their eyes closed, their feathers dulled, their faces had become clean slates. Then the lechuzas, all 13 of them, vanished into thin air, leaving only downy feathers floating innocuously in the rays of the morning sun.